bless Japan, God bless the United States of America, and God bless our Navy. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Vi dico di più, Roma dovrebbe essere la capitale dell'Unione Europea e voglio portare questa rivendicazione nel Parlamento Europeo, perché la capitale dell'Unione Europea non può essere il posto più comodo dove mettere gli uffici.
I believe we are now witnessing the return of fascism. This is becoming increasingly evident every day through the similarities in situations and dynamics between the political regimes that ruled during the interwar period and those of today, as we have sought to closely examine and identify the main sources of these similarities and the reasons behind the resemblance between the two systems.
Before the First World War, it's an age of extraordinary technological achievement. You get this extraordinary explosion of transport, trains and cars.
Over the past 2 decades, researchers and political analysts have begun to point to the emergence of a modern form of fascism that differs fundamentally from the classical fascism known in the 20th century under Mussolini and Hitler. This modern fascism is primarily based on the rise of extreme nationalism and the concentration of power in the hands of a leader or a narrow elite, alongside a clear decline in the role of democratic institutions in monitoring and maintaining the balance of power. According to a study by French political scientist Olivier Filiol, 2018, these modern regimes emerge through a populist discourse that links national identity with the figure of the leader, while exploiting the economic and cultural fears of the public. The American historian Timothy Snyder, 2017, also argues that this type of fascism relies on weakening judicial and media institutions and shaping public opinion through social media networks instead of traditional newspapers and radio. In practice, these tendencies can be observed in several countries where strong emphasis is placed on nationalism in official political discourse, such as calls to protect national identity at the expense of minorities, or the use of provocative slogans in populist election campaigns, alongside the weakening of parliamentary oversight or judicial independence. A study published by the European Center for Populism Studies, 2021, noted that these trends are not confined to a single country, but extend across continents, including Eastern Europe, the United States, and parts of Latin America, where nationalist rhetoric and security-related narratives are used to justify political decisions that restrict media freedom or minority rights. In short, modern fascism is an evolved model of authoritarian power that combines extreme nationalism, weakened institutions, and the use of digital age tools, making it more difficult to identify and resist compared to traditional fascism.
They see them rightly as vulgar, as idiotic, as narcissistic, and ignorant. They believe they can control them.
In recent years, it has become evident that the rise of nationalism and populism represents one of the most prominent features of political discourse among a large number of leaders around the world. Some scholars view this as one of the key indicators of a return to patterns resembling modern fascism, without implying a direct equivalence. These discourses are based on the glorification of the true people, in contrast to corrupt elites or external forces, which gives them a strong capacity for political mobilization and for simplifying complex economic and social issues into a binary us versus them. The British political scientist Cass Muddy argues that contemporary populism divides society into a pure people and a corrupt elite, and nationalism is used as a tool to reinforce this division by linking national identity to political loyalty. In this context, one can observe how some leaders use rhetoric focused on protecting national identity, rejecting immigration, and questioning international institutions as a threat to state sovereignty. On the ground, this trend is reflected in the speeches of several leaders who connect national security with cultural identity and present themselves as protectors of the people against multiple threats, whether economic, cultural, or geopolitical. For example, in several European countries, anti-immigration rhetoric has been used in political campaigns, while in the United States, slogans calling to restore strength and make the country great again have emerged, reflecting a clear nationalist tendency aimed at redefining national identity in an exclusionary way. Recent studies by research institutions such as Chatham House 2020 show that the rise of this type of discourse is linked to increased economic uncertainty and declining trust in traditional political parties, pushing voters toward leaders who offer seemingly simple and strong solutions. The French political philosopher Pierre Rosanvallon also notes that modern populism relies on a form of direct legitimacy that bypasses institutional intermediaries such as parliaments and the media, favoring a direct relationship between the leader and the people. Thus, the rise of nationalism and populism in contemporary political discourse is not merely an electoral strategy, but reflects a deeper transformation in the exercise of power, where national identity and mass emotion are used as central tools to reshape the political landscape. This raises serious questions about the future balance between power and institutions in the contemporary world. The interplay between populism, concentration of power, media control, weakening of pluralism, and the use of fear is embodied in patterns of political discourse and practice that can be clearly observed in contemporary contexts, and are supported by several scholars in comparative politics, such as Cass Moody, John Werner Miller, and Ruth Ben-Ghiat, in their analyses of populism and modern authoritarianism. In realist literature, this pattern is often depicted through leadership figures presented as the voice of the people against a corrupt elite, constructing a narrative that simplifies political reality into a struggle between good and evil, an approach that is also reflected in contemporary political discourse. In the case of Donald Trump, this is evident in the America First rhetoric, which combines populism, claiming to represent the people against the establishment, with the use of security and fear, immigration, terrorism, economic threats as tools to justify stricter policies. It also includes attempts to influence the media through attacks on traditional outlets and labeling them as fake news, a pattern that aligns with what scholars describe as efforts to reshape the public media sphere. Additionally, there are policies and signals aimed at strengthening executive power, promoting centralized decision-making, while reducing the effectiveness of institutional checks, which resonates with academic warnings about the internal erosion of democracy. In the European context, these patterns are repeated among rising right-wing parties, such as Rassemblement National in France and Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, where nationalist rhetoric is used to challenge political elites and globalization. With a strong focus on security and immigration as key mobilizing issues, alongside criticism of European institutions and calls to restore national sovereignty. In realist literature, similar patterns can be seen in depictions of societies experiencing collective fear, where crises are used to justify the rise of a strong leader presented as the only solution, while the space for opposition is gradually reduced. This convergence between political discourse, real-world practices, and analytical literature suggests that these phenomena are not isolated, but rather reflect structural transformations in the relationship between the state, society, and the media, within a global context marked by rising economic and identity-based tensions. This, in turn, is driving a rapid redefinition of the concepts of democracy, power, and sovereignty.